She was supposed to be invisible. A night shift nurse in a building that belonged to criminals, scrubbing tile while souls slept. Then the window shattered. Then the man fell through it, bleeding and barefoot and breathing her name like a prayer he had never spoken aloud before. He had no right to say it. No right to look at her that way, half-conscious and burning with fever, his tattooed hand reaching across the wet bathroom floor toward her like she was the only solid thing left in a collapsing world. Something impossible cracked open in his chest in that moment. Something that would never close again. Welcome to Afro-Korean Story Hub, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. The bathroom tiles were cold beneath Sophia's feet when she heard the crash. She had been working a double shift at the private medical floor of Hansung General Hospital, the kind of floor that asked no questions and accepted no insurance cards, the kind that certain powerful men kept funded and quiet. She was 2 hours from the end of her shift, standing in the supply room counting gauze rolls and trying not to think about how long it had been since she had slept properly. Then glass exploded somewhere down the hallway, not the delicate pop of a dropped bottle. Something violent, something with weight behind it. Her training moved her before her mind caught up. She found him on the floor of the private bathroom at the end of the isolation corridor. A man. Broad-shouldered, well over 6 feet, dressed in all black that was now more red than anything else. The window above the deep-set sink was shattered inward. Rain and cold Seoul night air poured through the gap. He was on his hands and knees, head bowed, blood dripping from his side onto white tile in a pattern that her nurse's eye immediately catalogued as serious. Possibly critical. She should have called security. Should have pressed the wall alarm and backed away. Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door. He heard her. His head lifted slowly, and the face that turned toward her stopped every rational thought she had been constructing. Sharp jaw, dark brows, a mouth set hard against pain. Eyes so black they looked like the space between stars, and inside them something that did not match the rest of him at all. Not danger, not cold calculation, something raw, desperate. Like a man who had been running for a very long time and suddenly had nowhere left to go. His lips moved. The word that came out was so quiet she almost missed it beneath the sound of the rain. Nay-saring. My love. Then he collapsed. Sophia moved fast. She had the presence of mind to lock the bathroom door, then she was on her knees beside him, gloves from her pocket already on her hands, fingers finding his pulse at his throat. Rapid, thready, but present. She tore his shirt without ceremony. The wound was a long gash across his left side, deep enough to need stitching, shallow enough that it had missed everything vital by luck or by God or by both. There was a second wound, older, bandaged badly on his right shoulder. Someone had tried to patch him up already. Someone without training. She worked in silence. Cleaned the wound. Pulled from the emergency kit she kept on her person because this floor taught you very quickly that things went sideways without warning. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. Her mother had always said that was her gift, that even when the rest of her was falling apart, her hands knew what to do. When she pressed the final piece of tape down, he exhaled. She sat back on her heels and looked at his face. Kang Min-ho. She knew who he was. Anyone working this floor for more than 2 weeks knew who he was. The name moved through the hospital's private corridors in the same way thunderstorms moved through open valleys. Quietly, inevitably, and with the understanding that you did not stand in the way of them. He ran the Kang Syndicate, one of the oldest and most feared criminal networks in South Korea. He had never been charged with anything. He had never needed to be. His lawyers were better than prosecutors, and his name carried enough weight that most people chose not to look too closely at the details of his business. She had seen him exactly once before tonight. 3 weeks ago, when he had walked through this very floor without looking at anyone, flanked by 4 men in dark suits, heading to visit someone in the last room. She had pressed herself against the wall to let them pass. He had not glanced at her. He was glancing at her now. His eyes had opened somewhere while she catalogued who he was, and they were fixed on her face with an attention so focused it felt almost physical. "Who are you?" he said. His voice was rough but clear. Accented English that told her he had either lived abroad or studied the language somewhere serious. "I'm the nurse who just saved you from bleeding out on hospital tile," she said. "You're welcome." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Sophia," she added, because the silence felt like a question. And then immediately regretted offering it, because the way he said it back to her a moment later, low and deliberate like he was trying the sound of it, made her chest do something it had no business doing. "Can you stand?" she asked, reverting to the professional distance that usually came naturally. He pushed himself upright with the kind of controlled effort that told her he had been hurt before and had learned not to flinch in front of anyone. He made it to standing. He was enormous. She was not a small woman, but he made the already small bathroom feel like a closet. "You need rest," she told him, "and antibiotics. And to explain to me what happened before someone else from your world comes through that window looking for you." He looked at her for a long moment with those impossible eyes. Then he did something she had not expected from a man with his reputation. He told her the truth. The following morning, Sophia told herself exactly 3 times that she should report the incident, and then did not. She wrote in the incident log that a window had been damaged during a maintenance check and filed it under building maintenance. She told herself it was a one-time act of crisis management and nothing more. She told herself this while staring at the small black card he had pressed into her hand before she had escorted him out through the service corridor at 4 in the morning. "Do not use this unless you have to," he had said, "but keep it." She kept it. A few days later, she found flowers at her nursing station, not the generic arrangement that families sometimes sent. These were Nigerian irises, deep purple, rare enough in Seoul that she could not imagine how anyone had located them. There was no card. There did not need to be. Her colleague, Nurse Park, leaned over the counter with wide eyes. From a patient, Sophia tucked the cardless arrangement under the counter and said she did not know. That evening, she noticed the car. It was parked across the street from the hospital entrance when she left her shift. Black. Still, the driver did not get out. But when she reached her bus stop and the rain began, a black umbrella appeared above her head from behind, and a man she did not recognize held it steady without speaking. When her bus came, he folded it and disappeared back toward the car. She told herself this was not romantic. This was surveillance. This was a dangerous man keeping an eye on someone who knew too much. This was not a fairy tale. She repeated this while lying in bed that night staring at the ceiling. The next day, he came to the hospital, not through a shattered window this time. Through the front entrance, in a suit that cost more than her monthly salary, with 2 men behind him carrying the kind of quiet that bodyguards cultivate. He walked directly to her nursing station and stood in front of her like he owned the floor, which she supposed he effectively did. "Sophia," he said. Same voice. Same low, deliberate way with her name, "Mr. Kang," she said. "You should not be here, you should be resting. Your wound will tear if you are not careful. I came to see how you were," he said, as if this were a perfectly ordinary thing for a man like him to do. "I work here," she said. "I am fine." He looked at her for a moment. Just looked. The kind of looking that felt like being studied. Then he said, "You did not report what happened." "No, why not?" She thought about it. "Because you would have been in more danger if I had," she said. "And because whatever you had done to get yourself through that window, you were already paying for it." Something moved behind his eyes. A kind of recognition, or perhaps surprise that she had answered simply and without calculation. He nodded once. Then he left without another word. But the following morning, there was a package at the nursing station. A high-end medical kit, fully stocked. The kind that operating theaters kept on hand. Tucked inside was a single folded note in a handwriting that was precise and slightly angular. "You should have better tools." Keishi did not throw it away. Later that week, the trouble started. A man arrived on her floor asking questions. He was not a patient. He was not a family member. He had the kind of polished surface that hid something sharp underneath, and his eyes moved through the hallway cataloging every face. He stopped at the nursing station and smiled at Sophia with the charm of someone who had practiced it until it looked real. "Lee Dong-yi," he said, producing a business card that named him as a private investigator. "I am looking into an incident that occurred here a few nights ago. Broken window, possible trespassing. I have a client with an interest in the matter." Sophia looked at the card. Then at him. "There was a maintenance incident," she said, "fully reported. Nothing else to tell." He tilted his head. "Perhaps you saw something unusual. A person, perhaps, injured, out of place. This is a hospital," she said pleasantly. "Everyone here is either injured or out of place. Is there a specific patient you are inquiring about? I can direct you to our admissions office." He held her gaze a beat longer than comfortable. Then he smiled again and pocketed the card she had not taken. "Of course," he said. "Thank you, nurse." He left. But she had the feeling he would come back. She was right. 3 hours later, when she stepped out of the staff exit into the back alley to take her break, Lee Dong-yi was waiting. And this time he was not smiling. She should not have been alone. She knew that. The alley was narrow and badly lit, and the city noise swallowed sound here in a way that was not comforting. He stood between her and the main street with his jacket open in a way that made a point without saying anything. "I will be direct," he said. "I represent interests that want to know if Kang Min-ho was in this building 4 nights ago. If you answer, I will make it worth your time financially. If you do not answer, I will make it worth your time in other ways." Sophia felt fear move through her in one clean wave. She had grown up in circumstances that taught you to recognize when a situation had real teeth behind the threat. This did. She kept her face neutral. She was reaching for her phone when the door behind her opened. Kang Min-ho walked out of it. He had known, she realized later. He had known about Lee Dong-yi the moment the man set foot on the floor. His people watched everything, cataloged everything. He had been 3 minutes away when she stepped outside. 3 minutes that he had apparently crossed very quickly. He said nothing when he appeared. He simply stepped past Sophia with the measured calm of a man who had done far more dangerous things than walk into a dark alley. He looked at Lee Dong-yi with the expression of someone who is not angry, simply resolved. "Leave," he said. Once, quietly, Lee Dong-yi left. The alley was silent for a moment. Rain had started again, the soft, persistent kind that Seoul favored in spring, and Sophia stood in it with her heart still beating faster than she liked. "You have people watching me," she said. "Yes," he said. "You did not ask me." "No," he said. He turned to look at her. "I did not." His jaw was tight. He looked for the first time like he was uncertain about something. "I should have told you. I was not certain you would allow it." Sophia exhaled through her nose. They stood looking at each other in the rain. "You cannot keep doing this," she said finally. "I know," he said. He paused. "But I am going to anyway." The days that followed moved like a current pulling her somewhere she had not agreed to go. Sophia told herself she was simply being professional. She checked his stitches twice more when he returned to the private floor under the pretense of business meetings. She changed his dressing with steady hands and clinical detachment, and did not think about the way he watched her work, as if she were doing something extraordinary rather than something routine. She did not think about the way his breathing changed when her fingers pressed near the wound, not from pain, but from something else entirely that neither of them acknowledged. She told herself all of this very firmly. Then she went home and thought about it anyway. A few days later, she arrived at the hospital to find her shift assignment had been changed. Not by the nursing director, by whoever controlled the private floor's funding. She was now assigned exclusively to the isolation wing, the quieter section, the one with better equipment and significantly better pay. The paperwork had already been processed. Her supervisor looked mildly bewildered and entirely unwilling to argue with whoever had made the change. Sophia stood at the nursing station for a long moment staring at the updated schedule. Then she took out her phone and sent a text to the number on the black card. "You cannot buy me a better shift." The reply came in under 2 minutes. "I did not buy it. I reallocated resources." "There is a difference." She stared at the screen. "There is not," she typed back. His response took slightly longer this time. "You work too hard. The floor you were on was understaffed and dangerous. This one is neither. It is not buying. It is correcting something that should have been corrected regardless of you." She read it twice. Set the phone down. Picked it up again. "You are very good at making things sound reasonable that are not reasonable," she wrote. "I have been told this," he wrote back. "Is it working?" She did not reply, but she kept the shift. That evening, she stayed late finishing notes and found him in the corridor outside her station when she finally gathered her bag to leave. He was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, and the particular stillness of someone who has been waiting and is not bothered by it. He had shed the suit jacket. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and she could see the edge of the tattoo that climbed his left arm, dark ink against pale skin, intricate in the way of something that had taken years to complete. "You were waiting for me," she said. "I was in the building," he said. "For how long?" He did not answer, which was an answer. She looked at him for a long moment. The hallway was quiet. The late shift had thinned the floor to skeleton staff, and the overhead lights had dimmed to their overnight setting, casting everything in a low, warm gold that had no business making a Mafia boss look like something from a painting. "Walk with me," he said. It was not quite a request, but it was softer than a command. She walked with him. They went through the service exit, and down the back stairs, and out into the courtyard garden that the hospital kept between wings, a small space with benches, and a cherry tree that was just beginning to lose its blossoms. The petals came down around them in the night wind like something from a drama she would have rolled her eyes at under other circumstances. She said nothing about this. He probably arranged the weather too, she thought, and was annoyed at herself for finding that funny. "Tell me something true," he said, settling onto a bench. She sat at the other end of it. What kind of true anything? Something that is only yours, she thought about it. She was not a woman who offered pieces of herself easily. Life had taught her to be careful about what she put into other people's hands because people did not always hold things gently. "I wanted to be a pianist," she said finally. "Before nursing. I played for 12 years. Then my mother got sick and money went different places and I chose something practical." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said honestly. "Not the nursing. I love the work, but I miss the way playing felt. Like the noise in my head went quiet and there was only the sound." He nodded slowly. Like he understood that specific thing about needing silence inside a loud world. "What about you?" she said. She half expected him not to answer. He looked at the cherry tree. "I wanted to be an architect," he said. "I was good at it. I had plans accepted by a university in Paris when I was 17. What happened? My father died," he said simply. "And I was his only son. And in my family that means something that does not leave room for Paris." Sophia looked at his profile against the dark. "Do you regret it?" she asked, using his own question back. He was quiet for several seconds. Then he said, "I did, for a long time." He paused. "Less now." She did not ask him what had changed. She was afraid of the answer. The following week, a man named Oh Seung-wook appeared on the floor. He was a pharmaceutical company executive, handsome, charming, the kind of man who was comfortable in hospitals because he had funded several of them. He came in twice that week to visit a board member of the hospital who was recovering from a cardiac procedure. The second time, he stopped at Sophia's station on his way out. "You are new here," he said, which was not true. She had been on this floor for 3 weeks, but she understood what he meant. "You stand out." She was professionally polite. He was professionally persistent. He asked if she knew any good restaurants nearby. He asked if the hospital staff had any social events he might contribute to as a sponsor. He made the conversation last longer than it needed to in the way of a man who wanted her to notice that he was choosing to stay. She noticed. She also noticed, 15 minutes later, the change in the energy at the far end of the hallway. Kang Min-ho had arrived for what had become a semi-regular presence on the floor. She had stopped questioning it. His business interests connected to this hospital in ways she did not need to understand. But today he had stopped walking. He stood at the corridor junction, very still, his eyes on her nursing station. Specifically on the spot where Oh Seung-wook was still talking to her. The two men had not acknowledged each other, but the quality of the stillness between them was like the air before a storm, the kind of pressure you felt in your chest before you understood why. Oh Seung-wook eventually said goodbye and left. Kang Min-ho walked to her station and set a folder of documents on the counter with controlled precision. "He needs to sign these," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the direction of the patient he supposedly visited. She looked at the folder, then at him. "You have been standing in that corridor for 7 minutes," she said quietly. He met her eyes. "Yes, you were watching him talk to me." His jaw moved slightly. Yes, she held his gaze. She did not feel afraid. She felt something warmer and more complicated than fear, something that moved beneath her professionalism like an undertow. "Min-ho," she said, and it was the first time she had used his name and they both heard it. He exhaled slowly through his nose. "I am aware," he said, "that I have no claim on you." That his voice was careful and deliberate the way a man sounds when he is being honest about something that costs him. "I am aware that this situation is not simple and that I have placed you in difficulty by existing in your life. I am aware of all of it," but she said, "But I did not enjoy watching him talk to you," he said. His eyes were direct. "At all." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up the folder and said, "I will make sure these get to the right room." She walked away. She could feel his eyes following her the entire length of the corridor, and she kept her pace steady and did not look back, which was perhaps the most difficult professional thing she had done all month. The crisis came on a Thursday. Sophia had just finished her afternoon rounds when her phone buzzed with a message from a number she did not recognize. The message was a photo. Her, walking to work that morning. The caption beneath it said, "We know who keeps his secrets. Step back or we will make stepping back unnecessary." Her hands went cold. She thought about the options. She could go to the police. She could leave the city. She could pretend she had not seen it and hope it went nowhere. She took out the black card and called the number. He answered before the second ring. "There is a problem," she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. He heard it in her tone anyway. "What happened?" She read him the message. There was silence on the other end that was not the absence of sound, but the presence of a man making very rapid calculations. "Do not move," he said. "Stay exactly where you are. I am sending someone to you in 3 minutes." It was actually 2 minutes and 40 seconds. A woman appeared, compact and efficient, with close-cropped hair and the kind of eyes that processed threat assessment as naturally as breathing. She introduced herself as Han and said nothing else, but positioned herself between Sophia and the main entrance in a way that was quietly professional and not at all subtle. Kang Min-ho arrived 12 minutes later. He walked through the ward with the contained fury of a man who has learned to keep his fire internal, because external fire tends to burn everything within range. He did not raise his voice. He sat across from Sophia in the consultation room Han had cleared, and he put his hands flat on the table and looked at her. "Are you hurt? No. Are you frightened?" She thought about lying. "Yes," she said instead. Something moved through his face. Not sympathy exactly. Something heavier. "This is because of me," he said. She did not argue. "I am going to find who sent this," he said. His voice was quiet and very final. "And I am going to deal with it. But before that, I need you to understand something." He held her gaze. "If you want to leave, if you want distance from me and everything connected to me, I will arrange it. New placement, new city if you choose. I will ensure you are safe and you will never have to think about any of this again." The offer sat between them. She looked at his hands flat on the table. Strong hands. Careful hands, she had discovered, despite everything that was said about them. "What if I do not want to leave?" she said. The silence after that was very long. "Then I will protect you here," he said finally. "But Sophia," his voice changed, lower, more honest than she had heard it. "I need you to know what that means. It means I am going to be closer than is comfortable. It means my people will be around you. It means that whatever this is between us, it is going to become impossible to pretend it is nothing." She looked at him. She had been pretending it was nothing for 3 weeks. She was exhausted from it. "I know," she said. He looked at her with those dark eyes that held too much and showed too little, and then, for the first time, he reached across the table and put his hand over hers. Not pulling, not claiming, just covering, just staying. She turned her hand over and let his fingers close around hers, and neither of them said anything for a very long time. The threat was traced within 48 hours. His people were efficient in the way that only people who have survived by being efficient can be. The message had come from a faction connected to a rival network, men who had been watching Kang Min-ho's movements and had identified Sophia as a pressure point. They had underestimated 2 things: how quickly he would respond, and how completely. Sophia did not ask what happened to them. She asked if it was finished. "It is finished," he told her. She believed him. What she had not anticipated was the aftermath. The way that shared danger strips away the careful performances people construct around themselves. The way that sitting across from someone who chose to stay when leaving was offered does something irreversible to the space between 2 people. The following days had a different quality. Something that had been held carefully at distance was now simply present, acknowledged, impossible to unacknowledge. He was there every evening, not always in the building. Sometimes just the car outside, the umbrella in the rain, the quiet evidence of someone paying attention. But increasingly he was present in more direct ways. Sitting across from her in the courtyard with coffee she had not asked for but always accepted. Walking with her to the bus stop and then past it, and then to her apartment door before she realized they had covered the whole distance without either of them suggesting it. She did not invite him inside. Not yet. He did not ask. But he stood in the hallway outside her door one evening, when the rain was genuinely bad, and she said, without planning to, "You can come in for 10 minutes." He came in for 3 hours. They sat on opposite ends of her small sofa and talked the way they had started talking in the courtyard, honest and unhurried, each of them offering pieces carefully and finding them received carefully in return. He told her about his father, the weight of inheriting a world he had never chosen. She told him about her mother's last year, the particular grief of watching someone diminish slowly. He told her about the loneliness of being surrounded by people whose loyalty was purchased. She told him about the loneliness of being the competent one, the steady one, the one everyone leaned on until there was nothing left to lean toward. At some point, the rain became very loud and neither of them moved to acknowledge the time. When he finally stood to leave, he looked at her in the low light of her apartment with an expression that was stripped of all the armor he usually wore, and she felt the full weight of it land somewhere in the center of her chest. "Sophia," he said. She stood. They were very close. "I know what this is," he said quietly. "And I know I am not a simple man to care about. I know what comes with me." He paused. "But I want you to know that whatever you decide, whatever you choose, I will not disappear from your life in a way that leaves you worse than I found you. I am not built for half measures. If you let me in, I am in completely." His eyes held hers. "And I am asking, not assuming." She looked at him for a long time. Then she closed the remaining distance between them and kissed him. He was still for exactly 1 second, as if making sure this was real. Then his hands came up to her face, careful and certain all at once, and he kissed her back with the quiet intensity of a man who had been holding something in for a very long time and had finally been given permission to set it down. What followed was the kind of evening that exists outside of ordinary time. Soft and urgent, tender and consuming, full of the particular honesty that comes when two people have already shown each other their broken places and chosen to stay anyway. The city hummed beyond her window. The rain came and went. The world continued without them for a few hours, and they let it. Later, she lay in the darkness listening to his breathing and felt the familiar cold thing begin moving beneath her warmth. The fear. The old architecture of expecting loss. She was not enough. She had never been enough for anyone who had other options. He would wake up and the clarity of daylight would show him what he had, and he would be kind about it, careful, but he would find his way toward someone who did not carry so many rough edges. He always had choices. Men like him always had choices. She told herself she was being logical. Then she got up very quietly and gathered herself and left. She was 3 blocks from her apartment when her phone rang. She did not answer. It rang again. She kept walking. Her eyes were burning and her chest felt like something structural had given way inside it. Her phone rang a 3rd time and then went quiet. And then she heard his voice behind her. "Sophia." She stopped. She had not heard him following. She did not know how he had reached her so quickly. She stood on the rain-wet pavement with her back to him and pressed her eyes closed. "Do not do this," she said. "Please just let me go." "I will not," he said. His voice was close. Not reaching for her, not touching, just present. "Let me say one thing, and then if you still want to go, I will take you wherever you need to be myself." She did not walk away. "Whatever you are afraid of right now," he said, "I already know it. I have watched you carefully for months. I know how you hold yourself when you are waiting to be disappointed. I know the way you make yourself smaller when you think someone is going to leave." He paused. "I am not going to leave. That is not a thing I say. I do not make promises I do not keep. Ask anyone who knows me." She turned around. He was standing in the rain without an umbrella because he had clearly come after her without stopping for one. His shirt was damp. His face was open in a way she had not seen before, unguarded in a way that a man with his history did not allow in public. And the fact that he was allowing it here, on a wet pavement at an ungodly hour, said more than any arranged words could. "I'm afraid you will realize I am not what you think I am," she said. Her voice was uneven. "That once the newness goes, you will see I am ordinary and you will have moved on before I finish noticing." He looked at her steadily. "I thought you were ordinary the first time I saw you," he said. "You were at a nursing station filling in paperwork. You did not look up. You had your hair pulled back and you were chewing the end of your pen and there was nothing remarkable about it at all." He paused. "And I stood there for 4 minutes trying to think of a reason to speak to you that would not sound like what it was." He held her gaze. "You were ordinary, and I could not stop looking at you. That has not changed in 3 months. It will not change." The rain came down softly between them. Sophia breathed out. He crossed the space between them and put his arms around her, and she let herself be held, fully, without pulling back or maintaining the careful distance she usually kept between herself and anything that mattered too much. She pressed her face against his chest and felt the solid reality of him, and the fear did not disappear entirely, but it moved back, became smaller, became something she could carry rather than something that carried her. "I am not easy," she said into his collar. "I am not looking for easy," he said into her hair. They stood in the rain until it stopped. The weeks that followed were different in every way. She stopped expecting him to pull back and found that he did not. He was present with the consistency of someone who had decided and did not revisit decisions. He arrived with food when she worked late. He sat in her apartment reading while she studied for a recertification. He took her to a piano bar in Itaewon one evening, and she played for the first time in years. And when she looked up, he was watching her with an expression she would return to in her memory for a long time afterward. Tae-jun, his lieutenant, pulled her aside one afternoon when Min-ho was occupied and said simply, "He has not been like this since before his father died. I thought you should know." Then he walked away before she could respond. She carried that information quietly. One morning, she arrived at the hospital to find Oh Seung-wook in the corridor again, visiting the same board member, once again finding reasons to linger near her station. He was charming in the persistent way of a man who considers charm a form of inevitability. He said something about dinner again. He said it in the particular way that suggests the invitation is already accepted in his imagination. Min-ho appeared at the station 11 minutes later. He did not make a scene. He was not that kind of man. He simply walked to her station and stood beside her and looked at Oh Seung-wook with the quiet and absolute authority of someone who does not need to raise his voice, because the room already knows what he is. Oh Seung-wook read the situation with the rapid social calculation of a successful executive and made his excuses with impressive speed. When he was gone, Sophia looked at Min-ho. He looked back at her. 11 minutes, she said. 7, he said. I was on a call. She pressed her lips together against a smile. He reached out and tucked a piece of her hair behind her ear with a gesture so unhurried and unashamed that Nurse Park at the adjacent station made a sound that was extremely unprofessional for a medical environment. That evening, he took her somewhere he had not taken anyone. The unfinished building on the east side of the Han that he had purchased the year his father died and never developed. He had drawn the plans himself over several months, he told her, in the margins of other documents late at night when the syndicate work was done. His architect's mind that had never stopped entirely, just gone underground. He showed her the drawings on his phone. The building that existed only in those margins. Clean lines, open spaces, the kind of structure that made room for light. She sat beside him and looked at them for a long time. You should build it, she said. He looked at her. I mean it, she said. Whatever the reasons were for Paris, they are not the reasons now. You are not 17. You can choose something different. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, I have been thinking about transition. Moving things toward legitimate operation. It takes time. It requires the right moment. She looked at him. He looked at her. What if the moment is now, she said. He took her hand. What if it is, he said. 3 months later, Min-ho stood in front of her in the courtyard of the hospital where everything had begun, and did not kneel because he had asked her once how she felt about theatrical gestures, and she had said she preferred honest ones. So he simply stood in front of her and took out a ring that was simple and precise, and exactly what she would have chosen herself, and said her name the way he always said it, like it was something he had decided to keep. She said yes before he finished the sentence. He laughed. It was a full sound. The kind she had worked for without knowing she was working for it. She pressed her face against his jaw and felt him exhale slowly, the deep exhale of a man setting down something he had been carrying for a very long time. 6 months after that, they were married quietly, just people who mattered. A ceremony in a garden with cherry blossoms and no performance. Only the honest thing, the real thing, the thing that had started in a shattered bathroom at 4 in the morning, when a bleeding man had looked at a nurse like she was the only solid ground in a collapsing world. A year later, Sophia sat in the apartment that had become theirs and looked at a small plastic test on the bathroom counter and felt a kind of joy so complete it was almost frightening. She found him in his study, which had architectural drawings pinned across one entire wall now, the building by the river finally taking shape in something other than margins. She set the test on the desk in front of him without saying anything. He looked at it. He looked at her. He stood up and came around the desk and held her with both arms and said nothing for a very long time, and she felt his heart against her cheek, steady and certain, the heartbeat of a man who had found the thing he was building toward without knowing he was building toward anything at all. My love, he said quietly, into her hair. The same 2 words he had whispered into cold tile the night everything began. She held on tightly and let herself believe, finally and completely, that this was real and that she deserved it and that it would hold. It didn't. That is the full story, besties. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you the hardest. Was it the rainy pavement confession, the piano bar, or that very last scene? Like this video, share it with someone who needs a beautiful love story today, and subscribe to Afro-Korean Story Hub so you never miss what comes next. See you in the next one.